environmentally sensitive habitat area. We need to stay away from that. There are barriers and protections that we're going to put between ESHA and where the work's going on, with one exception. There is a pipeline that has to be removed that's relatively close to the ESHA area. Now, if I'm not mistaken, was it Fish and Game or someone wants that tank? The Coastal Commission, they want us to take that pipe out because that is, and as you say, interfere with the current habitat that's there. And so they've encouraged that removal of that pipeline. That's the only area that we're proposing that will impact the ESHA area. So
you're going to have to go into the red line stream ESHA?
Not into the stream, it's to, what would it be,
the
southern border of the stream, but it's not in the stream, but it's outside the stream. But that line should have never been put there by the Navy in the first place. That line needs to go one way or another.
Yeah, well, environmental standards back then, especially on a military installation, aren't near as high as they are on an equivalent civilian facility. And that's one of the...
This was one of the reasons why they want that pipeline out.
Well, you can have a biological monitor while you do that, right?
Right. And another thing, Mr. Griggs, just as we're going to have Michael here to monitor the environmental portion of the project, we're having a full-time biological person here once construction starts. So that's not going to be ignored. There's going to be a person here that you can talk to.
Because right now all it says is there has to be some assessment within 48 hours. None of the literature indicated that there would be somebody on the site during the hours of operation.
We can add that to the record right now. There will be a biological monitor while the construction is going on.
Thank you.
And if, like I said, Scott, if you want to make a note of that and condition the project that requires a biological monitor once construction starts.
We'll do that.
Thank you.
And that person, Mr. Griggs, you're going to be able to communicate with.
Okay. I just want to interject before we go any further that none of the people involved with the stakeholders object to the removal of the tanks. We all want to see the tanks go.
And I appreciate that.
But we want to make sure that it's done right. We live here, we live adjacent to this, we live on the streets, so we really need to be informed about every aspect. And nobody is hostile towards the removal of the tank. On the other hand, we know that those tanks aren't being removed for our aesthetic enjoyment. So, I just want to make that clear because there's not a stakeholder here that doesn't want to see the tanks go.
No, and I appreciate that, I really do.
Okay. Moving on. In the biological, they referred to the California Natural Diversity Database and the the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. That's how they ascertain what particular species are sensitive in this area. But I was curious about, there's another document called the Atlas of Sensitive Plants of Morro Bay, and it specifically mentions all of the species. They may not be federally listed, but they're listed by the state. Now, I just need to add to that. Before the present owner purchased this property, I used to go birding up here. Somebody left a gate open, and everybody was coming into the property and enjoying themselves. Some of them foolishly were climbing on the tanks. But I also got the combination of the gate out here by Scott Potter, who was with Shaw Environmental and Infrastructure. That was a trade-off. I was to keep an eye on the place and let him know if anything happened. And I got the key so I could come in here and get balls and return them to kids. And I came in here to bird. And I found a lot of species, because I keep track of everything I see. I'm a lifetime birder in a book. And I found a lot of those species on the Atlas of Sensitive Species in Morro Bay. So I'd like to know why those species weren't accounted for in that biological assessment.
Is that typically a requirement of the city, Scott, when you get a biological survey that
They identify the endangered or sensitive species in the area typically, and then they conduct site visits to determine whether they're present here, either living on the site or transitory, going through the site. That's typically what the biological reports do. The one that was submitted in relation to the project was similar.
And did that have the thoroughness that the city required on the report that we submitted? Or?
Terra Verde typically does a fairly decent job with their biological reports, in my experience.
Well, my
Not to
statement,
say that the issue that you raised couldn't be specifically addressed by, through an addendum or something along those lines. I mean, certainly worth asking the consultant.
Now, let me ask
there
you,
were quite a, excuse me.
Mr. Griggs, why don't I ask Terra Verde to update their report and incorporate this atlas?
Thank you, and I would be happy to provide them a list of the species that I've observed of birds and bats.
All right.
There's quite a few bats on that list that I've seen up there, but I haven't been able to identify all of them. But they're all on. They are all state listed.
You have a copy of the biological report that we have now?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I will contact Terra Verde tomorrow and tell them that they need to update it and to make sure to incorporate any sensitive plants or fauna, basically, that are part of the Atlas of Sensitive Plants of Morro Bay.
I've also seen, apart from the birds and the bats, I have seen in the project area, not behind, not down here, I have seen golden eagles, red-tailed hawks, barn owls, red-tailed hawks, great-horned owls, kestrels, bobcats, coyote, deer, ground squirrels. So this, just the project area, is going to eliminate habitat for those animals. Is there going to be a reciprocal area set aside to mitigate for the habitat that is being removed?
The project we're talking about right now is demolition of the tanks and associated facilities. That's not going to go outside the burned area except for the one